Annie and Joe. This is the first video ever that we make, and we both had some adventures over the past couple of months. And
yep, we've been out of New York.
Yeah.
And I recently got back from Cuba.
And I just came back from Myanmar, where I went to do a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And I'll start by asking Joe a few questions about Cuba. Let's get started. So first of all, I've never been to Cuba myself. How many times have you been, and how far apart were your trips there?
So the first time I went to Cuba was 11 years ago. So it was in 2006. And I went for, I was dancing in a company then in Mexico City, and we went for a festival that they have every year. And then I recently returned, and this time I came back more as a tourist and to visit a person that I'd met, a friend that I'd met 11 years ago, who was a dancer then, and he was Cuban.
Mm-hmm.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And how do you think these two visits compared to each other? I'm sure there's a lot to say about that, but in terms of the country.
Yeah, well, I think like they're extremely different, and also my memories of them are very different. I recently went back before I went to Cuba. This time I went and read. I keep a journal, a diary, and I went and read what it was like, or what I remembered from 2006, and the country then was very different because they were still under Fidel Castro's rule.
Yeah.
And at that point, the U.S. citizens weren't allowed to travel to Cuba. So I actually didn't go from the U.S. I went from Mexico, and I went with a dance company. So I was sort of not really there on a very legal basis. I was more there just for dancing. And the Cubans that we were able to talk to were dancers, most of them part of the country, but at that point also the tourism was very split from Cubans, so there wasn't a lot of interaction. Also, it wasn't as visited of a country then, so there weren't as many restaurants as there are now. Or I remember one night we were supposed to dance, and we were ready, and then all the lights went out in the city. And they turned the energy off because they needed to save energy in the city. So we didn't dance.
Wow.
And that was a really big eye opener for me. I was like 23 years old, and I grew up in the United States. So I was like, wow, this. And I'd only been living in Mexico for 4 months. So really had only had much experience in my life in the U.S. And it was like, wow. So they just turned the electricity off because they don't have the money to afford to keep it going.
Is that something that the citizens would know about beforehand, or no?
No, it just happened.
Wow.
Yeah, because we had a performance plan, so we didn't perform, and we left. And I remember thinking like, wow, everyone, that's it. We just go. That's it. You just have to let go. Like you said, okay, we're not going to perform, and just the ability to just let go and live life and to keep going. And we performed the next day, and that was that. That was different. So now that I didn't see that happen, I don't think that happens as much now. I think that the country is more money, and it's the resources are better. One thing that hasn't changed, I'll finish this really quickly, but one thing that hasn't changed is that the Cuban people are really amazing, kind, genuine people. And I remember the first time I went, and I wrote this down, and I was like, wow. And then my first day there, I hated it because I was like, my room smells, or this, it's like being such a new person to Cuba. But I remember thinking, like, the Cuban people are amazing, and just the generosity, and also the presence, and the performing for Cubans were some of the best audiences I ever had the first time. And it's the same now. They're still it's really amazing.
Yeah. Wow. What other parts of the world have you been to?
Yeah, so I lived in Mexico. I've traveled extensively through Western Europe. I've traveled to just Morocco for continent-wise. That's the only place I've been in Africa. Thailand recently, and South America. I toured in South America and visited as a tourist. So danced in South America and went as a tourist. Yeah, to like Ecuador, Peru, and Argentina.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Oh, and Central America, Costa Rica.
Yeah. And so how would you describe Cuba to someone who hasn't been there, or how would you compare it to other places you've been?
Well, Cuba's not like any place that you'll ever go. I mean, there's a lot of places you could say that, but I really think that Cuba like really not any place you ever go. For me, there's moments when I'm in Cuba and it's magical and surreal.
What do you think is the main reasons to that?
I can only explain moments when I'm like watching a Cuban band play, and it's just like where I'm on another planet.
What makes it feel like that?
Maybe it's because it's music I've never heard, because it's a combination of people together I've never seen, and also because there's not a lot of travel of the Cuba. Before, there wasn't a lot of travel of Cubans outside of Cuba and into Cuba, so I think that has definitely made it its own world. And so it is like walking into a different planet. Yeah, for me it's like a different planet. And people could say, oh, it's because it has the cars from the 1950s, but that's never really struck me as the reason why it's so different, or because the architecture, because there's a lot of cities that still have old architecture, and for me it has to do with like the energy, the feel, the people, and that and the presence. It's a presence in Cuba that there's no other way to explain presence, I think, except for Cuba.
People are so present?
They're so present.
Wow.
Yeah, they're present in the day, in the moment, and they're present in life and conversation. And
what did you do there? And what has been your favorite experience in the country?
There were so many favorites. Yeah, so I went to Havana, and then I went to Trinidad, I went to Cienfuegos, and then I came back to Havana. And the best experience of the country is to be with the people. It's to be with
the locals.
The locals, or anyone who lives there, is the best experience. And I think the other best experience is just to let go, like just to like really be like, I'm here. Like I just have to let go of like any of my like necessity to be on time, or like my plans, or like, because the Cuba's going to kind of just take you over, even if you don't want it to. Like I went with a friend and we both got sunstroke at one point, and it was like, okay, we're just going to have to like let this be, like. But that, you could think that's a bad experience, but at the same time, you're like, I'll just like, that kind of just says like, hey, you're in Cuba, like wake up, like just be with it. Stop trying to like do your New York walk down the street, like you can't, you just have to slow down. So and I think like just that, like experiencing the people, taking like collectivos, taking the bus, anything, just like talking, trying to do things like staying at casas, stay with the people at the casas, not in the hotels. And
what is that? Is that kind of like a bed and breakfast?
Casa is like a bed and breakfast,
okay.
Yeah. And like there's Airbnb, but also it's kind of fun to just. I met a guy from England on the trip, and he said, we like to just get off and just like talk to the people from the casas and like, well, how much is it here, and like look at it, and then go to the next casa and the next, and they seem to like have fun doing it. And then when you do stay at a casa, you stay with a family or with people, you get to know them. You're in their house. It's a casa house, so it's really a great experience. I mean, same with Airbnb, but it's also kind of fun to just show up and find one. Yeah. You just walk along, and they have these little anchors over the doors, and there's tons of them, so it's easy to find them. And
wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
How do you think that Cuba will change in the near future?
Yeah, so I have a story to go along with that, actually. So one night we went out to, who was my friend who I was staying with, favorite bar, and we went out, and they only let in like, it's a small bar, so they don't let in a ton of people, but we met some people there who were producers, and they were doing a concert. They had some DJs that they brought from the US. They were actually from New York, and they were doing a free DJ night at this like great restaurant across from the island, in this little place where there's a fort. And they had brought in some DJs from New York, and they were promoting it at this bar. So we decided to go the next night, so we went. So this is like across from Havana. So we go into the tunnel, across the water, and we go there, and just to see that in Havana, first of all, just to see these DJs, and they had a production crew was filming, was a huge change. But that's not even what really stuck in me. What stuck in me is I left and I walked out to the water, and I could see across the water, I could see there's Havana. So here's Havana, and the like, you know, about that tall are the buildings, and there's just like cars going by, and they're like the 1950s cars, and there's like sparse lights. And then at the very edge of it, the very edge of Havana, parked, is a cruise ship, about the same height as all of the buildings in Havana. And it has more lights on the cruise ship than all of Havana.
Wow.
And I wish I had a picture, but I didn't have my camera with me because we'd gone to like go see a DJ, so we were just dancing. But that picture will just stick in my mind, and I was like, wow. So as far as like Havana changing, I think, yeah, it is changing because, you know, more and more tourists are coming. Cruise ships are coming. This didn't happen before. Like, there's an influx of tourists coming in. And but it's good. Like, it's good. The Cuban people are getting, they're opening restaurants, they're opening cafes, people are staying in their houses, they're in the tourism industry. I think that part of it is changing, which is good for Havana. I think what is not 100% changing is the government yet. I mean, I think it has changed some because they have so much more freedom. They can travel now and they can set things, but they still like one pay rate. They're still like, if you work in anything out of tourism, you're still making the same amount of money. So that is something that hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like going and visiting Havana, like it's a city. It's going to change every single day, just like any city. So yeah, it's changing now because there's an influx of tourism. It's changing now because Fidel Castro is not over it, but the people are still amazing, and that's kind of what makes Cuba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. It sounds like if you want to go, you should go now.
Yeah, but I don't
I
like. I think that like, yeah, it's gonna change, but I really just feel like it's still gonna be Cuba. There's still gonna be amazing people. Like, you can't take that away from them. So I'm gonna take over asking questions now about Vipassana, and so I think. But at first, I wanted you to just explain a little bit about what is the Vipassana, like what happens for the 10 days. Like, I'm curious about what you do. When you're there, if you could just give a background.
Yeah, of course. So really, the backstory to this is that I heard about Vipassana originally from a good friend of mine who is Burmese. She's from Myanmar, and she actually lived in the US for quite a while and went to a Vipassana for the first time here in Massachusetts herself. And then after she moved back to Myanmar, she went a couple of times there as well. And she told me about this already back in 2013. And I definitely got interested then, and she gave me this book, which is called Vipassana, The Art of Living. And it's about Vipassana, and it's about the philosophy, and it's about the teacher and his teachings, and all of the back kind of philosophies and methods as well. But then it also highlights that this is just theory, and you really have to experience. And by the way, before I went, I think the longest I'd ever meditated was 30 minutes. Probably max, and I would not do that a lot. My way of meditating would be more of a lifestyle of mindfulness and keep like trying to be mindful. And so I knew that when you go to Vipassana, your schedule is basically but I don't think I really fully realized that you actually wake up at 4 a.m. every day, and you start meditating at 4:30, and your last meditation session is from 8 until 9 p.m. And that's when you can go to bed if you want, or I would usually fall asleep around 11 maybe, and so you don't get a ton of sleep there. It's definitely not relaxing. You meditate 11 hours in one day.
Wow. Wow.
And so you get food at 6:30, you get breakfast, and then you get lunch at 11.
Did you have someone leading you in the meditation?
Yeah, so there's this famous teacher called S.N. Cuenca, and there's a bunch of recordings of him, and he's actually dead now. But so it's all recordings mostly of him. So in each of the sittings that we do, it will be his voice talking and him explaining these things. And then in the evenings, we would have every evening a 1 hour, 15-minute long video discourse by him. So that's also a recording, a video recording. And in addition to that, there are local teachers as well. You can go talk to them. If you have any questions, there's like designated time slots during the day when you can go talk to the teacher.
So the only time you're allowed to talk is if you go talk to one of these teachers, correct?
Yes, yeah. And that's twice a day.
That's twice a day. And you're not allowed to talk or write.
Yeah, you're not allowed to talk. I forgot to mention that. So it's a silent retreat.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And you're also not allowed to keep a journal.
No, right? You're not allowed to write. You're not allowed to read. You're not allowed to listen to music. I'm trying to remember off the list that I have of things you can't do. You're not allowed to masturbate. And, yeah, that's, I think, the main things.
Mm-hmm. And so, did you feel a change in your thoughts? And if so, at what point did that happen?
During the retreat. Yeah, so it's interesting because you really sit and meditate for 11 hours per day. Mm-hmm. And I think I made this calculation that if you calculate all the times that are left besides sleeping and meditating, it's about 6 hours, which seems like a lot, actually, because it didn't feel like that much. Mm-hmm. But because when you're meditating, you're not supposed to think. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see that the whole idea, Vipassana has a whole specific technique that isn't really, I was not that familiar with even after reading the book and everything, but it really is about feeling sensations in your body, and it goes through different steps where you learn how to get into that method. Mm-hmm. But once you do, you learn, and part of the teacher's teachings is about cravings and aversions, and that basically all of our lives we focus on cravings and aversions constantly. We're constantly in this flux between the two, and the idea or the end goal with Vipassana is to try to overcome that state, but also ignorance. Ignorance is the third one. You want to avoid these three things. So you want to be aware first of all, and then you want to be equanimous. So those are the two main things that you focus on while meditating. So I think a lot of my thoughts also were centered around being aware, aware of when my thoughts are perhaps falling in the category of craving or aversion, or maybe not so much ignorance. I think I was quite aware already, but craving and aversion is something that I got to a deeper level with. So I think I didn't necessarily think I had much cravings and aversions. And I think, like, in regards to your question about when, I think it was around day 6 or 7, so quite at the end, and I started to feel like it's almost over, and I started to think about my life after the retreat. Mm-hmm. And then I struggled a little bit to be in this focused state where I was focused on the sensations in my body and cravings and aversions, and I tried to put it in context of my own life, and you'll have lots of inner voices that try to tell you different things throughout this time. Sometimes it's like, oh, maybe I don't need to be here. This is enough now. I've learned this technique now. I'm ready to leave. There's a lot more to it. I could talk about it for a long time, but I think that the main message is that it would be really great for anyone to try this kind of thing. And you shouldn't really maybe say too much about it because everybody has to see for themselves, and it's going to be so individual. But yeah.
So did you ever have at any point that you thought, like, I have to talk, or I have to write, or I want to record this? Or
writing, yes. The other things, no, definitely not. I could have stayed silent for way longer. That was the easiest part by far. In fact, this is going to sound really crazy. Uh-huh. So you actually start to crave, or I started craving thinking and watching, like having my eyes open, because you're supposed to have your eyes closed. Wow. So then when I open my eyes, it felt amazing to see things, to see colors, to see shapes.
Wow, so it's interesting. I remember you said that. You sent me a text that was like, my eyes have been closed for like 60% of the time.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So everything's very bright.
That you start to crave even that.
Yeah, visual input. Yeah. I was like, wow, it's so fun to think. And in the beginning of the retreat, I was having a lot of, while meditating, first of all, and this is a common thing, a lot of people struggle with falling asleep during meditation, not because you're tired, but because it's a sort of, I guess, physiological defense mechanism. So you are developing an aversion against meditation, and your way of sort of battling, or your defense becomes drowsiness. And I would definitely have that. And the other thing I would have was I would go into these almost like trance-like states. And it was funny because the teacher talks about how your thought patterns tend to fall in one of two categories, like future or past, and negative or positive. But mine were neither. Mine were these dreams almost. It was like a fantasy, complete like invention of my imagination. It had nothing to do with past or future or positive or negative. It was just fantasy images in my head.
And so I'm interested in what happened when you left.
Yeah. So on the last day, you start talking to each other. So that's on day 10.
Okay.
And that's kind of weird. And I felt a bit strange about it because you've been silent for so long and you don't really...
And you're with these people, so you're seeing these people.
Yeah.
But you haven't said a word to these people.
Yeah. And I didn't... Honestly, yes, you're curious. And you develop these stories in your head. And the teacher talks about this too, how your image of another person is just like a sculpture that you've sculpted in your mind, where you've filled in the blanks that you don't actually know about the person, but you sort of fill them in. And this is exactly what happens there with your peers. Yeah. But yeah, it turned out to be really nice once we got to talk to each other. I don't think it was too harsh of a transition because I was staying with my Burmese friend in Yangon, and she and her brother have both taken Vipassana, so it was a nice, welcoming, kind of good place to go after.
Yeah, because they knew what you were coming out of and what you're going through.
Yeah.
That's interesting about how you perceive it, you see it as a sculpture, because you're not talking, so all of your perception of this person is just what you see. That's all you can imagine.
Yeah, but still, you think that you can have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, that is so interesting.
It really is.
Your perception of how you perception of people.
Yeah, even though that's not your focus and you're really supposed to be centered inside yourself, and I think that works fairly well. I don't think that was a huge issue.
Yeah. Okay. And then has this changed how you've related to life now back in New York?
It's interesting because you spend 10 days there and it feels like such a long time. Every day feels like 10 days.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I wondered.
Time slows down, and I was trying to focus a lot on things that I thought I wanted to get out of it. But that was before I realized what Vipassana really is. And then, but I think I'm more relaxed in some ways. I don't feel, at least so far, I don't feel stressed out, and I can't imagine really feeling stressed out. We'll see. It's still always a struggle to try to keep enough downtime, and time flies by, and how do you really slow that down? I mean, I try to meditate every day, and you're instructed to do that, to keep that up for a year at least, and to go to Vipassana retreats once a year. But we'll see. All you can do is try your best, and I think another thing is that you're really taught to not be disappointed in yourself, because disappointment can cause a lot of backlash that can make everything just fall apart. So even if you can meditate for 10 minutes, you can't judge yourself too harshly. So yeah.
And is there anything like you want to say or leave, or like say to people who might be interested in it, or just to give?
I think for everyone would get a lot out of it if you fully surrender to the technique, and if you fully just ignore the voices in your head that are trying to tell you to stop, or trying to tell you it's silly, or that you can do better things with your time. If you put your best effort into it, it is going to give you the most. And even if you fail a couple of times and you're not doing it 100% well, just keep going, I think. Well, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
And we hope this video thing is going to be something that we're going to be doing more regularly.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
And yeah. Okay, well, thanks. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so what did you do there? Maybe we should start in the beginning.
Okay.
It's really weird.